thank you for joining us for this month's GeoTalks Express, Exploring Global Mapper Mobile, What's New in version 2.3. My name is Jeff Hatzel. I'm a product manager here at Blue Marble. And today I am joined by my colleague, Eli. How are you today, Eli?
I am doing well, Jeff. How are you?
Good, thanks. I'm excited to have Eli join me on this today. Eli led the QA effort for this release of Global Mapper Mobile, and he was a huge help in that process. So we are excited to talk to you about things today. Before I get going here, Eli and I, let's just make sure we've both unpaused our screen share so that our users will see our live screen as we go. I know in the past I have forgotten to do that. And then once we've done that, let's go ahead and get started. So before we dive into things today, just a little bit about the webinar structure itself. I know we have some new attendees who haven't been to our webinars before. You are all in listen-only mode. That means you can hear Eli and I talk, but we cannot hear you. That doesn't mean we don't want your feedback. We still would love it. So please use the questions panel on the GoToWebinar sidebar or however you have that set up. We will do our best to answer questions live. We can't always get to all of them, but to anybody who's been to a GeoTalks before, you know that we will follow up via email sometime preceding the webinar. So we will do our best to get everybody an answer one way or another. For those of you who may have to step out early, or maybe you're listening later on because you came in late, this session is recorded, and give us a week or so to get that cleaned up and posted, but that'll be on our YouTube channel, and I believe our marketing team does a great job of getting that link out to you. And so keep an eye out for that if that's something you would like to have in your back pocket to reach back to. A couple things coming up on the Blue Marble calendar I'd like to just highlight for a second. So we are very excited to be getting back into the full swing of travel. We haven't done so in the past couple of years, and I myself just had my first work-related trip a couple months ago. So it's great for us to be getting back on the road and seeing people in person. For those of you who are going to Easton in Norway, we will be there in early September. Towards the middle end of September, we'll be at the Ohio GIS conference, and that's in Columbus, Ohio this year. I know every year many of us at Blue Marble are jockeying to try to go to Intergeo in Germany. That's always a wonderful conference, and we're excited to be back there in person as well. And then we'll wrap up the year with two slightly larger conferences as well, Trimble Dimensions out in Las Vegas, and then ITSEC, which every year is in Orlando and is a great post-Thanksgiving conference I used to love going to. So we will have some representatives there as well. So if you're at any of those shows, please come by and say hi. We do always love having our customers meet us in person when possible. Speaking of in-person events, we will be holding our first public training class at our new Blue Marble location in Brunswick, Maine. So not only is this the first class at this location, but it's also the first public class probably in the last couple years as well. So that will be this October, kind of mid to late October this year. If you're interested in an in-person training, it's a great, action-packed few days. You'll get to meet probably more than a few Blue Marblers because many of us cycle through training when it's in our own backyard. And you'll get to see, Maine that time of year in the fall is a beautiful place to be as well. So a lot of reasons to come to that in person. We will still, of course, be keeping up our online training, which has been very popular the past couple of years. So after that in-person training in October, we'll have two online classes, one early to mid-November, and then another round early to mid-December. Each of those, I should say, there's essentially a few days of global mapper training and then a few days of LiDAR specific training as well, depending on what your needs are. And so for both training and travel, you can always see more on that on our website as well. So, swing in there if you need to get some more details. If you love today's session so much that you just want to come back for some other GeoTalks Express sessions, we have quite a few coming up for the remainder of the year. So in general, we usually take September off because that's the busy release time of year for us, and that's when the next release of Global Mapper comes out. And so early October, I will be back for parts 1 and 2 of Global Mapper version 24. We'll be discussing what's new in those 2 versions. So please feel free, come by there. We'll get in depth about all that's new in version 24. And that's going to be structured a little differently this year, where we will be doing it within the same week. So early in the week, we'll do part 1, and then a little bit later in the week, we're going to do part 2 so that we can cover everything in detail. I did happen to see a question just come in asking about how to participate in online training. Go ahead to our website, and that website link will be up at the very end of the webinar today. You can go there. We have a dedicated training page, and it's actually hosted through the similar GoToWebinar, GoToMeeting interface. But go to our website and the training page there for some details on that. After our What's New in Global Mapper GeoTalks Express in November, we'll have a new release of Geographic Calculator, and so we'll introduce everything new there. And then we have probably one of the most fun and interesting ones for us, answering your FAQs. So members of the Blue Marble team will be here to discuss questions that we have received directly from our customers. And that's always a fun, light way to wrap up the year when everybody's minds are really already on the holidays and vacation and everything like that. Okay, one more quick thing to discuss before we get into today's topics. For the past couple of years now, we have conducted what's called Global Mapper Master, and that's our way of reaching out and soliciting feedback from our users on how they are using Global Mapper Pro and Global Mapper in their day-to-day and in their workflows. It's an annual contest, so we always get to feature and show our users accomplishments and any projects that you may have completed in Global Mapper. So if you would like to submit to the contest, again, full details on our website, and the link is there below. And again, I'll show this at the end of the session as well. You have until about early November to submit your applications for this. In general, we ask for it to be between 400 to 600 words, explaining not only your project, but specifically how Global Mapper helped you achieve it, and then any screenshots or captures and images describing your workflow in detail so that we can see and understand what you've done using Global Mapper. For me, that's always an exciting thing to review because we spend so much time with the product, we don't always necessarily see how our users are utilizing it. So it's always fun for us to see what everybody is doing. So please, submit to that if you would like as well. Okay, I think that's the last bit of calendar business for us here. So let's go ahead and get into what we are going to be talking about today. I will ramble on just a little bit more for a little bit of a generic, what is Global Mapper Mobile, and just a couple seconds of maybe history of the app, we could call it. I'm then going to pass it off to Eli, who's going to talk us through everything that's new and the bigger new features in the free version of the app. I'll then take over and we'll talk about some of the new Pro module features. We have some exciting things in there that we're going to look at. And then we'll wrap up talking about some of the other features of interest. Maybe they aren't some big ticket items, but things that Eli and I thought were useful to discuss and get on your radar, and useful to everybody's workflows in Global Mapper Mobile. Okay, and with that, let's talk just a little bit about what Global Mapper Mobile is, and how we position it in our product line. So Global Mapper Mobile, very often you'll hear us refer to it as GMM. That's Blue Marble's, it's our field data gathering and visualization tool. It allows us, to extend Global Mapper really to anywhere that you can reach with a mobile device. So it's really handy. Something I've been passionate about for a long time, probably because on top of my GIS interests, I'm a big fan of mobile technology. And so I started at Blue Marble 6 or 7 years ago, and my very first week at Blue Marble ended with the very initial release party for Global Mapper Mobile. I can't believe it's been that long, and how far the app has come in that time. The first couple of years of the app were mostly, getting it out there, understanding some user feedback, and kind of working on building, a more complete product. For those of you who have been with, or following Blue Marble for a long time, you will remember that version 18 of Global Mapper, which was right around that time frame, also had a big redesign to the interface. And when we did that, one of the things we wanted to focus on was carrying that over to Global Mapper Mobile. Right? We wanted to polish up the app. We wanted to streamline it with the desktop interface and keep it familiar where there was overlap and there were similar things that users would be doing. And so that I think is something that would stand out to anybody who uses the current version of Global Mapper Mobile, that we really try to keep it streamlined with the desktop app. Around that time is when we really started to get a significant amount of customer requests, right? We were seeing more usage, people coming to talk to us at shows and trainings and things like that. And so we started to get more requests for more specific and more advanced functionality within the application. And that's when we started to explore the idea of having a pro version or a pro module to Global Mapper Mobile. The base version of the app is free. Anybody can download it, install it from iOS App Store or the Google Play Store on Android. So we were starting to think about, what do we do with all these larger features? And that's where the Pro module came from. Some of those features are more advanced analysis tools, more options for online streaming data, connecting to external GNSS devices, and a whole slew of it. Some of those new features we'll talk about today. In the end, that's when we really started to see Global Mapper Mobile come into its own, right? So from the very basic workflow of sending data from your desktop to the mobile device, loading online data, any sort of basic field data collection, analysis, location-based recording, and things of that nature, all of that can be done with Global Mapper Mobile. And so what we are going to do now is get into talking about some of the new things that we can do. And so with that, I will stop rambling here and give Eli a chance to tell us all about some of the new features in the free version of the app.
All right, thank you, Jeff. The first new feature that I have to discuss here is that we have added the ability to record voice memos, which can be associated with features in the same way that pictures can. And the user does have the ability to record multiple voice memos for a single feature. And if that map file is then exported to Global Mapper, and you click on that feature with the feature info tool, the default Windows audio player will be used to play back that voice memo. And we have a few audio formats for the user to choose from, and the default can be set in the configuration dialog and can also be changed by tapping the select format button that you see here on this dialog. And this is also where the user can record and play back voice memos. We have added this feature to improve the usability for cases where the user will find it easier to record a voice memo than to type out a text notation. Jeff, is there anything you would like to add, or have any questions come in about this feature? I see a question has been
Oh, I'm sorry,
asked.
Eli. I had muted myself and was talking away.
Oh, okay.
What I was saying was that this was actually a request from a couple different users who, long and short of it, were tired of typing out long bits of information on a mobile phone. And they said it would be great if I could just talk my notes and save them to a feature. And so here we are. And I think, you could ask me that about every feature today, and we would say, more likely than not, we get a suggestion for it from a user. So if you are a user who is looking for something in the application for any of our apps at Blue Marble, we love to hear from you. Please give us those suggestions.
All right, well, I will move on to our next feature here. Hopefully, yes, which is sort of continuing on in a similar vein. We have added the ability to save multiple pictures to a single feature, whereas in previous versions of Global Mapper Mobile, you could only save one picture per feature. And these pictures can come from your camera roll or can be taken using the camera live on scene. And these are viewable in Global Mapper Desktop in a similar manner to the voice memos. And so just a note about naming here. The first image you attach to a feature will be given the name image link in the attributes there, and subsequent images will be given the names file link 1, file link 2, and so on. And this, as Jeff sort of alluded to, this is another feature that has been brought about by user feedback. And basically, users were saying that having the ability to attach one image to a feature was good, but that more would be better. Anything else you would like to add, Jeff, or any questions?
Yeah, we've actually had a couple questions come in. So somebody asked about this recording. The recording of this webinar should be available in about a week or so, and I believe you will receive an email once it has been posted to our YouTube channel at whatever email you signed up for signed up with for this webinar. Somebody asked about licensing mobile. So the free version of Global Mapper Mobile does not require a license. You can download and install the app right from either App Store on iOS or Android. Of course, you'll have to be a Global Mapper user so that you can send data to and from your mobile device. And then the Pro module tools that I'll be talking about in a little bit here, those do require the purchase of the Pro module. So, shoot our sales team an email for details on that. And I will have that email address up at the end of the talk, and you can feel free to contact them and they can give you all those details. We had someone ask about GPS receivers, and I will ask you to hold that question for a few minutes because I will get into talking specifically about your question. Okay, Eli, back to you.
All right, I did have one more note to add about multiple pictures. Just a note that this comes from user requests from users who wanted to have multiple angles of pictures on a single feature, and users who maybe had multiple things possibly multiple problems to document on a single feature. And when you save a Global Mapper mobile package file, you will have the option of whether or not to embed pictures and voice memos. So you will have the option to create lighter weight files without these things embedded. And speaking of saving, that sort of brings me into our next feature here, which is that we have added new autosave functionality. When auto-saving is turned on, Global Mapper Mobile will check every 5 minutes to see if changes have been made to your map. And if changes have been made, the app will save a backup file. If you make more changes and another 5 minutes go by, the app checks again and will make a new backup file, and the previous backup file will be deleted to save space. The naming convention, as you can see here, for backup files is that they are named backup followed by the date and time at which they were created. We have added this feature so that if, for example, your device runs out of battery or you accidentally close the app, you will not lose all of your hard work. Jeff, I am about to turn it back over to you for Pro. Are there any more questions about new features in the free version?
Yeah, actually, we had another question come in when you were talking about the pictures that I had missed when we were answering our other questions. And I think it's a good question. Somebody asked where the camera tool is. And the short answer to that is that there is no dedicated camera tool. You can either add a picture to a feature that you've created. So let's say I'm creating a point. Yeah, great. Thank you for going back to this, Eli. So when you create that feature on the bottom right of the application there, you'll see there's a little picture icon, and then you can either choose to add live from your camera or your library. There's also a little shortcut option. So if you're directly in your app, or excuse me, on the map recording features, if you tap and hold, kind of like a long press on your screen, that will automatically pop open the camera to take a picture point. So a couple of different ways to do that depending on your workflow, but a good thing for us to note there when I was talking about that. So thank you for that question. Okay, let's go ahead and move over now to looking at some of the new features associated with the Pro version of the application. And to start, we're going to talk about some new GNSS hardware support and functionality. When I mentioned in my early little talk about Global Mapper Mobile, how a lot of the motivation for the Pro module came from users asking for advanced functionality. Probably the biggest feature we had requests for was many of our users already had some type of GNSS device, and they wanted to use that directly in Global Mapper Mobile. You know, it's great that our phones and our tablets and everything have location services, but they aren't, you know, the most accurate or precise, especially for more, you know, survey grade activity. And so one of the big Pro module features is the ability to connect to external GNSS devices. We do our best to keep as up to date as possible with you know, any vendor hardware that our users request, you know, rather than us going out and saying you can only work with vendor X, Y, and Z. We try to be as flexible as possible and add support for as many devices as we can. I mention that because, again, it's another great time. You know, maybe you have something from a hardware vendor we don't yet support. Shoot us an email, tell us what you're working with. I have done a lot of speaking and partnering with a whole bunch of vendors to get support going. So certainly something we are actively looking to do. That leads me to mention specifically with new in the Pro version for 2.3, is now built-in support for the Garmin Glow. So that's, Garmin traditionally we think of, handhelds or maybe aviation location services, or, I have a Garmin running watch that has location services. But Garmin also has a little puck unit that communicates over Bluetooth, and you can now connect to in your Global Mapper Mobile Pro. And then Juniper has updated their geode model, and so we've added support for that as well. So if you're a regular Juniper user, keep an eye out for that.
Jeff, we did just get a question of a user asking if we support the MLID RS2 Plus.
Good question. And that actually leads me into a good segue for our next slide, but I will answer that by saying on Android, yes, and on iOS, I believe so, but I don't remember off the top of my head for certain. So that's why I'm hedging my bets there. The reason that I say that leads directly to here. So on iOS and Android, prior to version 2.3 that just came out, all communication was handled via Bluetooth, which sounds pretty straightforward. The caveat being there that Bluetooth on iOS is highly restricted by Apple, requiring both the hardware vendor and us essentially to go through a variety of steps to get approval. And on Android, this is much easier, much more open. Technically, any Bluetooth device should work just fine on Android. So that's why I say, simply because I don't remember off the top of my head, if we have support for the RS2 on iOS. So double check on our website. We have a full list of details there of supported units. That being said, given that Bluetooth had been a bit of a hurdle and many vendors weren't supporting it, we decided to look into what's called TCP and IP communications. So where Bluetooth access can be restricted, this is much more open access. So technically, any device that you have that supports this communication protocol can be connected to you in Global Mapper Mobile. Caveat being here, it's a little more set up on the user side of things. Bluetooth is essentially plug and play. TCP IP communication does require you as the owner, let's say, of the GNSS device to understand how it's configured, because you have to tell Global Mapper Mobile how to communicate with it. You'll end up defining a variety of parameters. Most important, the IP or the host name of that your GNSS device is using, the port that it's communicating over, and a variety of other parameters in terms of the protocol that you're using. So there's a few things there to be aware of, but it does open up a whole nother type of hardware and communication method for those of you who are looking for that type of workflow. I see that we had another question come in asking about NTRIP compatibility. So this is newer to Global Mapper Mobile, but back in, I want to say version 2.2, we released RTK support with a built-in NTRIP client. And so you can either use the NTRIP client built right into the app, or I know some devices require you to use an external or third-party NTRIP client, and you can do that too. And then your connection will just send the corrected data right into Global Mapper Mobile. Not something we are going to look at today, but again, take a look at our website. We have listed details on that, and on our YouTube page as well. I believe probably about a year ago now, We had a GeoTalks Express where I talked just about that. So if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and take a look at those sources, or of course, shoot us an email. I'll be happy to get you some more information on that. Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit here, moving on kind of from the location-based updates to some analysis in the field. And so we've added a couple new analytical tools that those of you who use Global Mapper Desktop a lot should be familiar with. One of those being cut and fill calculations directly in Global Mapper Mobile Pro. The idea here is that you're out in the field and you have walked the boundary of maybe a proposed construction site, mining pit, et cetera, et cetera. You can use, maybe you're connected to an RTK unit, so you have a very high accuracy boundary, and you need to get a quick volume calculation while you're out in the field to understand maybe is this feature or site or whatever the case may be, even within the ballpark of what I need it to be. It's a very simple setup. You specify whatever base elevation or height you need to be working in, and you're given then a volume calculation report. As I look at the one that I included here, I probably should have done something a little bit more exciting with both cut volume and fill volume, but I was using a proposed house site plan that I had handy. This is saved into a report that's saved in the app, and then you can share that back to the office. Maybe you're sending your data back to whoever does your data analysis in the office, and you're saying, I think this looks like a good potential area. Why don't you go ahead and take a look a little bit more detail and see what we think. Along the same idea of analysis here, we also have now a viewshed tool in Global Mapper Mobile. And what this allows our users to do is go ahead and conduct a quick viewshed analysis on a point feature while out in the field. Again, this could be a feature that you have recorded or created while out in the field, or something that you have sent to Global Mapper Mobile from Global Mapper Desktop. This will have a few more settings with it because we're defining essentially a variety of parameters associated with our viewshed. Again, this is not going to be the complete full-fledged version that you see in the desktop app, right? This is to give us a quick idea of what a viewshed might look like depending on whatever radius we're working in, what cardinal directions we're analyzing our viewshed, and how high our transmitter and receiver are. And so the idea here again is that while out in the field, I can very quickly, maybe I'm visiting a few proposed sites, I can get a really accurate location on them and say, okay, does this site look like it hits my parameters and my needs? I did a really interesting test case in this area as well. We're looking at the placement of some 5G ultra wideband towers, and even at its best, right, that 5G signal is pretty limited, and you can very clearly see when you're out in the field, okay, tower one's going to get us a signal in a certain area, but this other tower may not, or it looks like we're going to have a lot of dead spots, on a certain side of this large structure here. So a really great way to get some, awareness and draw some conclusions right when you're out in the field working with your data. I should mention both of these tools, viewshed and volume calculation, both obviously require you to have some form of terrain data loaded into Global Mapper Mobile, whether you're downloading it from an online source, sending it from desktop, whatever the case may be. I think it's important to note here, even though it's, it's probably fairly obvious. We shouldn't, I don't think we should expect to see, the majority of Global Mapper desktop tools in Global Mapper Mobile. More what I think we should expect to see is tools being added that are going to supplement a field workflow, right? You're probably not in the short to midterm going to be doing any extremely advanced LiDAR classification and analysis on a mobile device. But I can see the feasibility for, and I've already had people ask for, well, it would be great if I could generate some contours in this area, or maybe calculate a pile volume in addition to a cut and fill volume. So those things that will help speed up and improve our mobile workflows are things that I could see being further adapted to the mobile app. So again, maybe you're someone right now who's saying, oh, it would be great if I could do this on mobile. Please let us know, shoot us an email, send us a message on social media, however you like to communicate. And we would be more than happy to review and discuss that. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at I guess, non-analytical updates, but something that I think is very important. So one of the perks of having the Pro module or Pro version of Global Mapper Mobile is that you have some more control over projection supports. And we initially released a few generic projections so that users could hit some of the more popular ones while working out in the field. And of course, then everybody was like, well, we've got to have state plane and UTM support. So of course, both of those projections have been added to Global Mapper Mobile Pro. And when you're setting them up, you have the ability to control. So this is what we're looking at first here, state plane. So you can set your state plane zones and your units and any parameters that you need to. Very similar idea for UTM, right? You have control over what UTM zone you're working in and any parameters that you may need to adjust. You certainly can do that as well. Important note here, this also means that what you can do now is when you're sending a file, and we call it a GMMP, from desktop to mobile, you can include natively UTM or state plane. So if you're working in a current version of Global Mapper, you'll just need to have a version installed from July or newer, or of course, if you're updating to 24 in a couple of weeks, that will take care of everything for you as well. So a couple of different ways to use that that new functionality for you. Okay, I think that wraps up some of the big Pro features I wanted to talk about now. Eli, do you want to talk about some other features of interest that we have in the app now?
Yes, I would, Jeff. Thank you. There we go. So our first other feature of interest here is that we have made some updates to the location display that is on the main map view. So the user can now define thresholds for accuracy and differential age in the configuration menu. And if the values go above those thresholds, then they will change color and the user will be able to see that right in the main map view. Also, if the user has an advanced GPS connected and RTK configured, the differential age, fixed type, and connection status will be right there for you. And I will show an example of that right here. And we have made these updates based on feedback from users and some of the GNSS vendors that we partner with who have said, oh, you have such great information in the location info page, but some of that would be really nice to be able to see just as at a glance right here in the main map view, so the user will not have to switch back and forth between this and the location info page. Jeff, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you covered that well. Just another really good example of, I was having a great conversation with one of our partners, and like Eli said, they were saying how their users are going to want to see X, Y, and Z right on the screen, and that's how we got some of this feedback and some of that functionality in there.
All right, well, sticking with location here, we have added the ability to record location as a feature attribute. So if this is turned on, when you create a new point feature, it will automatically have an X coordinate attribute and a Y coordinate attribute. If you create a new line feature, it will have start X, start Y, end X, end Y, and bounds attributes. And if you create a new area feature, it will have a bounds attribute. And here you can see the add coordinate bounds attributes option in the configuration menu, and an example of a new area feature with a bounds attribute. Sticking on the subject of bounds, we have also added some options for users to select the bounds for online data. So this is for the situation where the user already has a map loaded and is adding an online data layer to it. You will select your source, and then when you tap connect, you will see the initial layer bounds menu here on the right, where you have the options of current view bounds, full source bounds, or center on GPS location. If you choose center on GPS location, the app will center on GPS location and also zoom in and just load the online source for that zoomed in area. And this is useful if you only need online data for a small portion of your map. It will make the loading of that online source quicker, which is especially helpful if you have a poor connection, data caps, etc. I don't think I've seen any new questions come in. Jeff, do you have anything to add?
I do not at this point. I think we're all caught up on questions as well. You're right.
All right. So I think I am now moving on to our last item here, which is actually a change that Android is making, and this affects devices with Android OS 11 or higher. Android is changing how data is accessed, and they're moving to a model more similar to that of iOS. So Global Mapper Mobile will no longer have access to all of the folders on your device. It will now only have access to its own app-specific folder. There is a permission setting where a user can allow access to media, and the user will be prompted for this on the first time that they open Global Mapper Mobile. You can still get data through third-party apps such as Google Drive, Dropbox, or from email attachments. You'll still have that open in option where you can select Global Mapper Mobile, and that file will be opened in the app and will automatically get saved to the GMM app-specific folder. And the same thing will happen if you transfer data from Global Mapper through the Mobile Data Management tool. You can still connect your Android device to a Windows PC in order to see all of your folders. I have seen a few questions come in here.
Yeah, we had a couple good questions. People asking about sending data to and from Global Mapper Mobile. So in general, what you'll do is, you may prep your data in Global Mapper Desktop. There is then a variety of ways to send it to mobile. Within Global Mapper Desktop, there's the mobile data management tool that allows you to either export the file, directly to your computer, and you can then email, Dropbox, Google Drive, however you want to get the file to your phone, or you can hook your mobile device to the same Wi-Fi network as your Global Mapper desktop computer and send it wirelessly to Global Mapper Mobile. So a variety of ways to do this. A couple people also asked about getting data out of Global Mapper Mobile specifically. Generally speaking, anything you do in mobile will be sent back to desktop in a file, again, we call the GMMP, Global Mapper Mobile package. Then from that file in Global Mapper, you could export. I think this question was about a CSV file. You could export that right out of Global Mapper Desktop that way. One more little point on scope storage while we have this up. It caught even us as Android developers off guard. Android had, starting back on Android 10, they had kind of been like, well, this is coming. And then it arrived, but it was only in beta. And then it got implemented, but anybody could get an exception to it. But now its scope storage is live. It's much harder to get an exception to if you're not someone who's making an app strictly like Google Drive or Dropbox or other file sharing apps. And so what this is essentially what life is like on iOS already. So from the app standpoint, it wasn't too much different for us, but we recognize that it's a big change for users. And so that's why I wanted to take just a second and have Eli talk about that today. So all of your data is still there. And accessible. It may just be a little different for you to do. If you find a struggle with it, please, send us, an inquiry, and we'll talk you through it. Anything else, Eli? Or I think we're probably just about getting ready to wrap up here.
Yep, I see. I think one more question just came in here from someone asking in terms of the Ntrip, GMM's Ntrip client, asking if that should work without an external GNSS device. And you do need a GNSS device that allows for making RTK corrections.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Technically, there are a few Android devices out there that support those corrections. We have just at this point had zero interest in it, and given the limited number of devices, haven't pursued it yet. That being said, to whoever asked this question, please send us an email. Something I would love to dig into. Just because we don't support it this second doesn't mean we are not looking to do so. I think it would be a realistic ad on Android. I don't see iOS allowing that level of permission or having support for that. So please, write in here. Let's finish wrapping up here, and I'll get our email addresses up on screen. So to wrap up, I think, somebody, I forget, at one point asked, like, what's the focus of this update for Global Mapper Mobile? And I think a lot of it is focusing on the user functionality in the field and expanding that functionality. Whether we're talking about some of the things like voice memos or extra picture features and things like that, or some of the more analytical tools coming to Pro. right? Our goal was to really expand that functionality for users in the field. So I know a lot of you have asked some questions and I said, email us. I mean that. The 2 emails listed here, let me change our screen here. Oh, there we go. The 2 emails listed here, the bottom one is our technical support email. We have a great team. I noticed a couple of you who asked questions have familiar names that I recognize from our support email. So email us about those NTRIP questions and things like that. If you are, somebody mentioned having a little trouble connecting to GPS, shoot us an email. If you want to give us any feedback or see new functionality, either our support email or the webinar@ email address on top there will be a great one. I sent a couple of you links privately answering your questions for some, where to find functionality. Head over to our website. We have a support section there for both iOS and Android, although they're nearly identical. There's a few little differences. So go ahead and take a look at your appropriate page for whatever operating system you're working on. With that, I think we'll wrap up. Eli, thank you so much for all your help today. I think this was a great webinar. Thank you all who attended. We had some great questions today. We don't always get a chatty audience, but we had some really great questions today. So Eli and I always appreciate that. It's much better than just talking to ourselves the whole time. So we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Again, keep an eye out for the recording of this in a week or so. Take care, everyone.